Good morning. Welcome to this meeting of the Eastern Area Planning Committee on Wednesday, 24th of September 2025. My name is Councillor David Took. I'm chair of this committee. My vice chair is Councillor Sally House. The meeting is being live streamed and is available to view on the council's website, and by attending this meeting, you consent to being filmed. The planning committee is not a public meeting, but a meeting to which the public is invited, and all attendees must comply with the ruling of the chair. Members of the public must not interrupt the meeting or cause undue disturbance. To support this, please switch off mobile phones or select silent mode for the duration of the meeting. Only those who have registered to speak in accordance with the speaking protocol will be invited to address the committee for a maximum of 3 minutes. This is limited to the first 3 people objecting, the first 3 people supporting the application who have registered, along with the town or parish council and ward member. No additional material is to be circulated to members of the committee today. We have 3 applications to determine today. The planning officer will be invited to present the report and recommendations. Next, I will invite members of the public who have registered to speak with the Democratic Services Officer before the deadline to address the committee in the following order: public against, public support, applicant or agent, town or parish council, and ward members. Each speaker has a maximum of 3 minutes. Following on from the registered speakers, the planning officers will have the opportunity to address any salient points they wish to clarify, and committee members will be given the opportunity to ask questions of the planning officers before moving on to their debate. At the end of the debate, we will take a vote, and I will declare the decision of the committee. Can I remind members that when we go into councillor questions and debate, please state your name and ward for the benefit of the public watching, to speak directly into the microphones so that we can all hear you. If anyone is using Teams, please ensure you're on mute and your device volume is set to 0. Before we begin, a few final points regarding general housekeeping. We are not expecting a fire alarm during today's meeting. However, should the alarm sound, please leave the building calmly and without delay using the nearest fire exits, which are located to the side of the room. The meeting will be formally adjourned at that point and will only resume once it is confirmed safe to do so. We do have a small change to the agenda this morning. One of the officers who was presenting the first item on the agenda has problems getting here. There's heavy traffic where it's coming from. Excuse me. So we'll actually start off with agenda item 3, then move back to both Vinegar Hall applications. So in terms of today, I'd like to introduce the officers involved in today's meeting. Kim Cowell, who's the Eastern Area Manager for Development Management, Ursula Fay, who is the Lead Project Officer, Robert Lennis, who is the gentleman we're waiting for, who's a Senior Planning Officer, Susan Hetherington, who is our Transport Development Liaison Manager, Ariane Ashworth, who is our Legal Representative, Megan Rochester from Democratic Services, and Joshua Kennedy, who is our Committee Clerk and Democratic and Governance Officer. Apologies for absence, Josh.
Thank you. Yes, so we've had apologies today from councillors Andy Skeets, Barry Lazard, Tony Coombs, and Spencer Flower.
Okay, thank you. And does anyone have a declaration of interest that they wish to make? I'll take that as a no. Can we confirm, excuse me, Can you confirm the minutes of the previous meeting, which was the 3rd of September? Has everyone seen them? Any points to make? Councillor Hobbs-Chow?
I will abstain, given that I was not here.
Okay. Okay, so we'll take that as no objections to those minutes. Members of the public, if there are any, or applicants, you can make your representations now, or you can speak when we have had the officer's report. And I'm assuming you'll both wait until the officer's report, is that? Okay, so the first item on the agenda that we're going to look at is P full 2024 06189 Hope Farm, Mill Street, Corfmullen, which is item 7 on your agenda. It's presented by James Brightman. And so, James, over to you, I think.
Morning, councillors. This application came to committee on the 30th of April this year, and you'll recall the discussion. It is to back with you to secure additional details about the alpaca trekking enterprise and to review the external cladding materials for the caravan. The proposal is to retain a stable rural building, site a mobile home for use as a temporary rural workers dwelling, retain 2 small sheds for ancillary residential storage, and change the use of the land to a mix of agriculture and alpaca trekking. It is recommended for approval. Town Council has objected on the grounds of the impact on the Dorset heathlands, landscape, historic environment, green belt, location, traffic interests, traffic increase, and countryside. The application site is in the green belt and countryside outside the urban area of Corfmullen and also outside the area of Great Landscape Value, and approximately 1.7 k's from the nearest protected heathland. The site fronts onto the A31 trunk road and its southwest boundary adjacent to Blandford Road. The listed St Hubert's Church is here to the west. The aerial photograph shows the buildings at the site are mainly grouped in the northwest. The access here onto the A31 bar some gates that are set well back from the road. This is the view as you come down the Blandford Road from Corfmullen. This is the mobile home to the clad. The proposed site plan. Number of buildings have been constructed since 2019, and the barn and rural building immediately to the south are lawful. These 2 buildings here. The grazing of the alpaca takes place to the east of the buildings. Sorry. And there's access to the old railway line just down here, and treks occur on that. And in terms of the lease, at the last meeting there was a debate about whether the applicant had a lease to use the old railway line from the council because the council owned the railway line. But he's in the process of doing so, and the council's land agent has said that they will grant it in principle, and it's just with them for the final details. So it's a foregone conclusion that will work. But if it wasn't granted for whatever reason, the applicant has got the space to trek and walk his alpaca on the land, and that won't affect the applicant's business. These are proposed elevations for the mobile home with the timber cladding and the sheds to be retained and ancillary building. The rural building to be retained in timber clad. Context of the site, this is from the access onto the A31. The A31 is here, big wide verge in front with the gates set right back and a tall hedge here. Gates just provide a bit of screening for the buildings behind. Again, coming down the Blandford Road from Corfmullen onto the A31, the low-level building here. Again, the access looking up towards the Blandford Road, which is here, and the barn behind. This is the approach from Wimborne on the A31. You're coming along, and the site's on your left. At the moment, the mobile home sticks out a bit more than the other buildings because it is not clad. It's quite a bright colour. And this photograph again back from the A31. The site on the left, the Blandford Road up here. This is the context with St Hubert's Church, the listed building. You see that the existing building here on the left, and with the church, the road, Blandford Road in between the church and the site. In terms of the application's history, it follows a refusal of a similar proposal. But the big difference there was they wanted to convert the stable's rural building into a temporary rural workers' dwelling, not for a separate mobile home. Whereas the current application is to use a mobile home for the dwelling and retain the stables building for the alpaca use. At that time, it was considered the use of a permanent building as a temporary dwelling. The requirement of the alpaca for alpaca business for additional structures would be inappropriate developments in the greenbelt. And also, the application was refused on the lack of information regarding traffic generation and parking in order to make a highway recommendation. And groundwater flooding was an impact that they hadn't covered. The council's land consultant has looked at the actual need for the building, the mobile home, sorry, and that's been accepted as functionally required for a temporary period. In that case, it respects core strategy policy KS2, which is a settlement hierarchy, and the national planning policy framework paragraph 84. The principle of development is considered acceptable. In terms of the site's location, it is not particularly accessible by walking or cycling, but paragraph 89 of the NPPF recognises that local businesses may need sites beyond existing settlements, and the use is sensitive to its surroundings with no adverse impacts on local roads. The mixed use of the site for the alpaca rearing and trekking is a small-scale economic use and rural in character, and accords with NPPF paragraph 88. The application site is not considered to be grey-belt for the purposes of the NPPF, as the site has a strong contribution to greenbelt purposes NB. Officers consider the rural workers' mobile home is inappropriate development in the greenbelt by definition, purely because it doesn't sit in any of the exceptions to inappropriate development in the greenbelt. That also applies to two small storage building sheds. The stables rural building is appropriate development in the greenbelt, as it's an appropriate facility in connection with the existing use of the land, preserves openness, and doesn't conflict with greenbelt purposes. The mixed use of the alpaca breeding and trekking may be considered inappropriate developments, as the trekking is an outdoor recreational use. Appropriate development, yeah. Sorry, maybe consider appropriate development, that's key. As the trekking is an outdoor recreational use and will have a modest impact on openness through on-site parking. Proposed parking of agricultural vehicles in the barn would limit the impact from the customer parking. The use is also contained by the site's hedge boundaries with the Blandford Road and not result in encroachment into the countryside. The mobile home and storage shed would have a limited impact on openness due to their small size. Town Council has considered the proposal would be harmful to the greenbelt, and no very special circumstances have been shown. As the proposal does not fail to protect the separate physical identity of individual settlements in the area, given its small area, it is considered compliant with core strategy policy KS3 in the greenbelt. And I'll go on to the very special circumstances later in the presentation. In terms of the impact on highway safety, it's accessed directly from the A31, which is the trunk road and national highway's responsibility. There's space to park vehicles off the highway whilst the entrance gates are opened. On-site parking is acceptable and the turning is acceptable too. The treks operate twice a week, 3 treks per day and the weekends. There's no use of the A31 by the treks. The council's highways officer has not objected, and national highways advise potential impacts can be managed by planning conditions. And with the imposition of conditions 5, 6, and 8, 4, 5, 6, and 8, no adverse impact on highway safety is envisaged. In terms of the environmental impact of the increased traffic, officers consider this to be low, as the low intensity use will only have a very small environmental impact. The proposal could not be reasonably resisted on this basis. This slide shows the alpaca trekking route should any problem arise with trekking on the old rail line behind. In terms of the impact on the landscape, the site is not in a protected landscape and outside the area of great landscape value. The buildings have an appropriate rural appearance and are grouped together, and the site boundary provides screening when seen from the southeast and west. There is less screening when approaching from the east on the A31, but the views are fleeting, and the cladding of the mobile home will make it less visually apparent, despite maybe appearing more permanent. But with a condition to require it to be sited for 3 years, it wouldn't be permanent in terms of planning. And on this basis, core strategy policy HE3 landscape quality is complied with. In terms of groundwater flood risk, since the refusal, the applicants come back, done a borehole test of the site, and the groundwater monitoring well results show the site not to be at high risk from groundwater flooding, and the risk is considered low. Heritage assets, the conservation officer, the council's conservation officer, has not objected, given the context, and there is sufficient space between the listed building and the site, and the hedging and the low-level structures would not give rise to an adverse impact on the setting in that building. Ecology, the town council raised an objection on the ecology in terms of internationally designated sites, the landscape and regionally important geological sites. The site's over 400 metres from protected heathland, and appropriate assessment has determined there will be no adverse impact. And Natural England has concurred with this and raises no objection. No adverse impact on regionally important geological and geomorphological sites. And a preliminary roost appraisal for bats has been undertaken on the site, and there was no evidence of bats on the site or in the buildings, but it recommended mitigate enhancement by nest boxes for bats to enhance the biodiversity, and condition 11 will require that. Other than the cladding of the mobile home, there will be no other works proposed, and the biodiversity checklist that's required indicates no need for an ecological appraisal. In terms of the planning balance, functional need for the rural dwelling, as supported by the council's agricultural consultant, is a very special circumstance that officers consider clearly outweighs the harm from the inappropriateness of dwelling and some loss of openness. Stables building is appropriate development, and the alpaca trekking use would preserve openness, and no additional harm over the existing agricultural use. No harm has been identified to highway safety, landscape quality, heritage assets, or from flooding. It's recommended that permission is granted for the dwelling and the mixed use as agriculture and alpaca trekking for a temporary period of 3 years from the date of decision, to allow the mixed use business to be established, and that permanent permission is granted for the stables and the rural building. At the last meeting, we discussed a condition with a slight amendment in terms of signage on the verge. And as mentioned earlier, this is a national highways responsibility, but we've suggested putting additional words, signage or sighting of items on the verge to prohibit those. This is just a synopsis of the main considerations, and that ends my presentation, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. We've got one public speaker on this, which is Mr. Ken Cooper. Mr. Cooper, if you want to take a seat at the small table there, the microphone, there's a little 2 buttons at the bottom on the right. If you press that, then the light will come on, turn red, and once you start speaking, you will have 3 minutes. You'll get a 30-second warning when you're about to run over.
That's very brilliant. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good morning. Our primary application was deferred from the previous committee, so the additional information can be obtained and presented to the council. The committee officer and LPA have already agreed the development was suitable in regards to an all material planning consideration, including in the principle of the development, the impact on the green belt and the landscape, ecological that the site is at no risk of flood and highway safety, and the functional and final tests are met. And for this reason, we are not discussing this again. I will therefore keep the speech brief and just highlight previous queries on the committee members as officer have supported the application in detail. The first point to make is that we do not consider this, that the previous concerns of the committee relating to the planning matters were clarified was required in regarding to the trekking route and the cladding of the caravan. Since the previous planning committee, we have been in contact with the planning officer and senior rural state surveyor ranger, and it has been agreed that the license to use the old railway track is soon to be granted. We do not have physical license in our possessions. We have been told by the senior rural estate surveyor ranger and planning officer that this has been agreed, and we will receive it shortly. This is noted in the committee agency. Unfortunately, there was not enough time for the licence to proceed prior to this meeting. We trust that the outcome the committee's first concern. Turning to the tracking, we have a suitable amount of land and ownership, and the tracking can and does occur on our own land. Whilst the licence to use the old railway means that we can also use that area for tracking, I would like to make it clear that it is not necessary and all the tracking can solely occur on our own land that we already own. This would be totally viable. So whilst we do not rely on the use of the old railway to make this tracking viable, it is a useful area to have and a licensed track on. In fact, we already use our own land for tracking, especially for the children with special needs such as autism and disabilities. We sent the plan to the officer prior to the meeting to help show you all where the tracking occurs, and we hope have seen this plan and it is helpful. I turn to the cladding of the caravan. In the last meeting, the head of Courtmain Parish seems to take objection to the caravan being clad. To be clear,
30 seconds.
We do not want to ever clad the caravan, and we apologise for any misunderstanding. And to be clear, we are not content to do whatever the LPA and council would like us in this regard to allow the permission to be granted. Finally, I would like to briefly discuss on signage. Whilst it has been agreed that the proposed are suitable for highway points of view, we did receive a letter many months ago asking the signage on the highway land to be taken down, and we did immediately. We will not put any signage on the highway land. The only signage that we have is on our own land that we own. I just want to make that clear. We are also number one on TripAdvisor.
Okay, thank you. That's,
So that's 3 minutes, yeah.
That's the 3 minutes, yeah.
Right.
But thank you very much indeed for that. Officers, want to make any responses to anything said, or you?
The only other thing I would say, Councillor, is that it's the plan that Mr. Cooper referred to as one I showed members earlier in the presentation with the green line with the trekking route. Just to clarify, I'm trying to find it now.
Yes, I think we got that. Around in a circle.
Oh, there it is. There it is. That's the plan.
Yeah. Okay. Do we have any?
Because there's one more thing.
Right, Joe, one more item. In terms of the cladding, I believe Mr. Cooper doesn't want to clad the mobile home, but there's a condition, number 3, that requires him to do so. Officers consider that, he was content to do whatever the committee might decide. Officers' recommendation would be to clad it for lesser visual impact, but it'd be up to the committee to decide whether that condition is necessary.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions from the committee? Councillor Brenton.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Brenton, Litchfield Nupton Ward. Could you put the other slide on, which is the labels of the sort of the property, is that the different buildings? I think it was either one forward or one back. That one.
There's a bigger. Is there a bigger one? I think there's a big one. So it was the beginning. Actually, might be easier. Whatever it is. Yeah.
Is it? I'm sort of. I am slightly trying to remember. Which was the one? There's the mobile home. Is the caravan? That's the caravan.
Yes.
And that is the one that may or may not get clad. Yes.
Yes.
The lawful rural building, is that clad at the moment, or is that
Yes.
wooden frame? I think it is.
Timber. Yeah,
Timber. And the other one that further south, that one, what's the cover? What's the skip? That's wood.
That's wood. That's lawful.
So now can you find the slide? I think you've got a picture of it going from the east west, which is where it shows. Yeah, the one with the red arrow in the corner there, that one. So that is the view, which is the indication of whether or not it should get clad, whether or not it is obtrusive. That is the view that we're particularly bothered about. Okay. You haven't got a close up of it.
No, I'm afraid not.
If I look on my own screen, perhaps I might be able to make that one a bit bigger. I agree that if it was clad, it would be much less obtrusive. But whatever we do, this is a 3-year temporary permission. So we may have to put up with it looking like that for 3 years, or we may forget it's there in 3 years because it's so unobtrusive by then. We've got so used to it, I suppose, is the dilemma, isn't it? Which is one of the reasons for, yes. So what sort of, and which sort of cladding are we talking? Are we talking about cladding fixed to the building, or sort of like a screen in front? Because in my memory, you don't really, pop rivet wood to a caravan.
I would suggest it would be physically attached to the outside of the caravan, because there are examples around the district of them doing that.
Is it physically fixed with brackets or something like that?
Yeah.
In terms of cladding, cladding is a vague term. It could just be a screen, but this is permanently fixed. Thank you very much. Can I bring up another point, please? On the impact on the landscape, I don't know if it's relevant, but this seemed to me very much like that gives the same sort of visual impact of a collection of pony paddocks, sort of the cutting up of a field into little paddocks with little sheds and things is very similar to you see around pony paddocks and such like. The impact on the landscape in some places, not in this area, can be quite irritating compared with farmland. It is a different impact. You can argue that it's not a problem long term, but it is. So this judgment that there will be no impact on the landscape is another balanced judgment call, really, isn't it?
I don't think it's got the
Yes, so I'll just come back to that. It's not a designated landscape, so it's not an area of great landscape. It's not an area of great landscape value, which is a local designation, but it's also not an area of national landscape area of outside natural beauty. So it's no quality in that respect. It's still a landscape with qualities, but to put some fences in a subdivided field with smaller fences is permitted development anyway. If any farmer wants to do that. As long as the fences don't exceed 2 meters high.
Oh, is that
They can do that anyway. So when they bring buildings on, they need permission, usually, but not always. So this could be argued to be less of an impact because there's one owner that's like to subdivide it. But I take your point.
Can I have another? And you'll probably say it's irrelevant, but I just would like to raise the issue, which I probably is not a planning consideration, so you can shoot me down. But I worry about the quality of the soil, because the problem with horse paddocks and such like is the amount of worming compounds they use on a very small area of land, because obviously you get a build-up. I don't know much about alpaca husbandry. I have to admit, it's not something I ever did at college. I don't think they had them in my day. And I wonder what the worm burden in the soil is doing, and what any worming products are doing to the biodiversity in the soil. Because I think we should, in future, begin to think in terms of the biodiversity in your soil organisms as much as above the soil. But there probably isn't an answer. Thank you.
There's not a planning through Chair, not planning answer, because that we can't control it under planning legislation. But other legislation, other government legislation maybe, but it's just not a planning matter, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I think people can feed their stock whatever they will without resorting to planning permission. And any further comments? I've got Councillor Florrick.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Scott Florrick, Corfmullen. In that picture on the screen there, top right, where those signs are on the verge, I assume? On the right?
This one.
Yeah. Are those the signs that we're referring to that we would not like?
I think they might, it's whether they're on the verge or not, I suppose, whether the National Highways own that piece of land. So they're almost on the boundary.
James, they're actually within that.
In the hedge. They're in the hedge apparently. So if they're on the applicant's land, it's not a National Highways concern.
Right, they're on his land.
I went by.
Councillor Sally House.
Good morning, Councillor Sarah House, Corfmullen. I'm encouraged by this application and the work that the applicant has done since it last came to us. Hope Farm is a very popular attraction. It's thought of well locally. It is the signage has been removed from the verge, and that's great. There are wider issues with regards to the A31 and access on and off of that road, and the signage which historically had been at times on the verge is part of a much wider problem. So I'm content that the applicant has contained signage to within the hedge, very much in line with it. And I hope there's a better understanding now as to why that was an issue. I'm really content the lease has been sought now for trekking outside of the site, and I think that can only benefit the applicant. I think with regards to the impact on the landscape, I think the biggest impact on the landscape is the fact of the larger barn. I know that ship has sailed, it's not part of this application, but I think the impact on that, to St Hubert's Church is of a greater concern than the subdivision of the fields and the other buildings. Whilst understanding the inappropriateness of this and therefore the harm to the green belt, and this is where we move into subjective territory, I would suggest, officer, with regards to the cladding. The applicant would prefer not to have to make those works. I think the principle of the town council, and having sat through their planning meetings, which I do for Chorusy, but don't comment on applications. But I think the feeling is that if this is temporary, a static caravan should look exactly like that. I have to say some of that is down to the lack of trust of capacity of enforcement. And that's something that we've experienced on a number of times. So rather than having conflict with the applicant in 3 years' time on something that actually appears to have sunk within its setting because of the cladding, I think the preference, my personal preference, would be for it to remain as it is, honestly, as a temporary structure, and whatever the applicant may have spent on the cladding of that item, I'm sure he's got better things to spend the money on. So I do support this application. I would prefer that the temporary accommodation remain looking precisely like that. I'm grateful for the signage to be moved. I'm content the lease has been sought, and I wish them well with their business.
Is that a proposal to accept the officer's recommendation with the removal of the condition regarding cladding and caravan?
I'm very happy to move that as a proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I go along that road quite frequently, and certainly as it was. Now it's a lot better regarding the signage, etc., etc. So I would go along with the officer's view, and I would second the proposition that we grant.
And the removal of the condition on the cladding.
Mm.
You're seconding both parts of that proposal.
Yeah,
just for
seconded.
clarity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any further? Councillor Hobbs-Chell.
Thank you, Councillor Hobbs-Chair of Fendown South Ward. Can I just ask what in terms of the conditions and the highways assumption is in terms of the access and the impact on access on the A31 should the business hours increase? I'm assuming that the assessment has done on the basis of the business hours and the level of traffic that is currently there, and I can't see, but I may have missed if there is a condition that controls that, and that would be a concern on the A31.
Through you, Chair. Thank you. Yes, I believe that National Highways have commented on the basis of a limited number of days to trek, and that there is a condition. I'm trying to find which one. Number 4, the limit.
Weekends and bank holidays.
So number 4, alpaca treks shall take place on weekends and bank holidays only. No trek shall utilise the access onto the A31. So if they wanted to change that, and also 8. Yeah, so the number 8 is about the timing of treks to make sure you get a gap between visitors to avoid any conflict with vehicle movements. So if they wanted to change that, they'd have to come and make new applications for those conditions, and then we consider it on its own merit. And consult National Highways.
Thank you.
That's your question. Yeah. Anybody else? In which case, we've got a proposal to accept the officer's recommendation with the removal of condition on the mobile home cladding, which is condition
9.
9. So the proposal is to accept the officer's recommendation but remove condition 9. And that's a summary of your proposal. And you seconded it. You're happy with that?
Mm.
Anyone else? Please show. We take a vote. All those in favour of the proposal, please show. That's unanimous. Any against? No. In which case, P4 2024-06189, Oak Farm, Mill Street, Corfmullen, is approved with the removal of condition 9. Okay, thank you very much indeed. We will now be able, I think, to move on to what were the first 2 items on the agenda. Traffic seems to have been solved. Thank you indeed, Mr. Cooper. So I'll ask Robert to come and present on Vinegar Hall, after which we'll have a big speech. One moment while we change over. Yes.
Thank you. think that it's only going to be weird. Must be what happens in 3 years' time.
Oh, yeah.
You can't say
That was.
go away because it's going.
Thank you.
There's 4 years left, and they'll still be on the planet.
Well, I went to I've got a grave already
Legal use.
paid for in a cemetery.
Oh,
So I went up there on Sunday.
If it's really important, you can
By the way, it's actually
ashes will be buried in the Minster.
Oh, will it? Right.
That's where my daughter is.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. And your wife as well.
It's
Your wife?
not binding.
No, gotcha. No.
Then I realised it wasn't.
Oh, you all together.
We'll all be together.
But
Well, Heather's parents are in there.
places go past
Well,
regularly.
then,
In my head, where is it?
Directly west of Wareham. On the road to Walton. Go over the brow.
David, have you had any repercussions about the audience site down on
Okay, just
Your-
because
the
we need
old
to
stuff.
change over presenters, we're going to adjourn for 5 minutes. So,
Oh, the eldest son,
Yeah.
no.
See the
No,
property.
it's okay, babe.
shall we start?
Lots of trees.
Okay,
Ready to rumble?
we are now ready to restart again. So we have the first item will be agenda item 5, which is 6/2018/0228 Vinegar Hall, Vinegar MBX 2680, presented by Robert Lennis. Robert?
Morning, councillors. I don't believe I've met any one of you yet. I typically work with the Northern Planning Committee and Northern team. I've been around a number of years. I'm helping out with capacity in the Eastern team and these two applications. My apologies for being late this morning. Traffic jam outside my front door pretty much delayed me about 40 minutes to an hour. So thank you for having me, and moving right along, as described, the proposed development before you is an outline application. So we're considering the details of access only. All other matters are reserved. So the principle of development and details of access. The next few slides I'm going to be putting on the screen are updates, mainly related to conditions. Let me go through some of these points. So the applicant has agreed to amend the scheme and add the words, not the, amend the scheme, amend the description of the development and add the words up to give them flexibility in the design stage later on with layout, appearance, landscaping. And the reasons for that will come up in the presentation later on. Several conditions that were set out in the original report that was published needed to be amended. And those amendments subsequently have been published in the latest officer's report that you will have read. And then finally, as I mentioned, the senior tree officer has updated their comments to no objections, subject to conditions and the signing of a Section 106 legal agreement. I've put the details of the conditions on the screen. We can come back to these. Looking at just print on a slide is a bit taxing. Moving right along to first slide, the location of the development. As you'll see, the red star locates where in East Stoke this proposed site is to be. It's just on the north side of the Wareham Road. Do I have a cursor? Let's see. Yes. So the cursor that you see moving on the screen, that's the red line of the site, the old Vinegar Hall site, as I refer to it. Right along. The next couple of slides are aerial photographs to give you an idea of what's happening in the area. There are some quarries, and in particular, this next slide, which zooms in to the site a bit more. There was a quarry to the north that is now in a stage of restoration, so it's no longer an active quarry. This next slide shows you some of the constraints, or is in fact the lack of constraints for this site. It's shocking that in Purbeck, there is a piece of land that's not designated for the ecological sensitivities. But this site is outside of any heathlands, plural, and it's immediately north of the Dorset AOMB. The only real constraint that I've identified with the site, or direct constraint, shall I say, is a tree preservation order for the site. So an area tree preservation order has been put upon the site, and the applicant and I have had regard in our discussions to this specifically. And that's why it was important for me to get the tree officer's support for the scheme and to walk the site and show him in detail. You'll notice that one of the conditions we are recommending is a removal of rhododendron from the site and a managing of ash trees. That in itself, I believe, is a benefit in landscape terms. As you probably know, rhododendron are an invasive species and generally frowned upon. So there is that benefit to the scheme, as well as the others I'll be discussing. This next slide is an indicative. It's only an indicative layout of the site. And you'll forgive me for jumping back a slide. These patches of grass are where they're focusing in the indicative layout, the additional housing. The next slide is an extract from their tree protection plan. And I put up this slide for a couple of reasons. First of all, as I mentioned with the proposed, or the issue with the layout in the indicative form is where you see the cursor up in the left-hand corner. That black dashed line is an exclusion zone for, on this plan, it's for the development, the stage, if it were to be developed. They'd be putting up some fences here to exclude an exclusion zone so they're not harming the trees on the site. But I've also identified, and I've brought this up with the applicant, that especially here in the north, plots 1, 2, 4, and I believe it's 10 to 15 are incorporating land in the rear gardens for a private rear gardens, but they have trees in it that are protected. And once you get trees into a private boundaries, it's very difficult for the council to protect those trees, even if they have a tree preservation order on them. So on this point, I've suggested just an informative. And one of the last informatives in the report relates to this point of excluding trees from private gardens in the detailed layout drawings. I believe an informative is appropriate at this time rather than a condition, because we are only dealing with the principle. We don't have the details of the layout, and it's understood, and it's a simple point. So I think putting a condition on is possible, but unnecessary at this stage. Moving right along, the proposal has another community benefit of providing. The proposal has another benefit in terms of the community hall. The Section 106 would secure the provision of a community hall for the area. And as you'll be aware from the report, East Stoke in this area have for a little over a decade been searching for a new community hall. They lost their old one back in 2008, I believe it was. And so you have community benefits here. This slide shows potentially where the community hall would go. It also shows public car park to the north. Now this public car park will also double for the Sang provision, which is the next application we'll be discussing. And you'll see there's a footpath that's could be designed and put through the wooded area. Moving right along, I've been to the site. This is a photo from last month, if that maybe even less. When my colleague speaks about the access arrangements and the need to create visibility displays, much of that has already taken place. So there may still need to be some more trees removed, or hedges more likely, as you can see in this lower left-hand corner. but I wouldn't say a significant amount. The next slide, the next two slides relate to highway matters. And for these two, I'll pass over to my colleague, Susan.
Through you, Chair. Susan Hetherington, representing the Highway Authority. So we have got a couple of slides that Robert's going to show, but the first one is the main one really to focus on. As you can see, this is two aspects. So the top part is the zoomed out, and then the bottom part is more detailed and zoomed in. So to ensure that the proposal is acceptable in highway safety terms, the primary vehicle access to accommodate all vehicle types and movements for the residential state road will be accommodated to the west. It must be noted that this is already an established access and has a function. So this would be the minor arm, and vehicles will be able to access and egress safely and within capacity. The horizontal geometric layout as proposed aligns with guidance, which lends itself to allowing a large vehicle such as a refuse collection vehicle to utilise the access. As Robert has alluded to about the visibility displays for a vehicle to see and be seen from the access are considered acceptable and accord with industry standard guidance. The proposed segregated footway that splays out on the radii coming out onto Wareham Road and the uncontrolled crossing to include vision for inclusive mobility are acceptable and accord with guidance. Do the bottom drawing just to indicate the bus stops are indicative and they are subject to further consents outside of planning, but there is a commitment to provide that opportunity to utilise local bus services to reach other settlements and towns east and west sustainably. The highway agreements team have reviewed the drawings as set out, and these are regarded as deliverable and justified, subject to further design checks and auditing. It's considered that there will be some additional vehicle movements on the network as a result, but these are considered to be acceptable within the variation. And so when you consider the baseline traffic flows on the network, although we can't see at the moment, just to detail, there is a secondary vehicular access to the east. So that's approximately 370 metres, I believe. That would be restricted to emergency vehicles only and will serve the properties currently using it. I think there would be that condition in place for us to work out how that's going to be managed, whether physically or by signage. But emergency vehicles will still be able to access by the west. There is another slide, and more. I'm very generous of Robert to show the slide now, thank you, but it's just to illustrate that the network does have to accommodate MOD vehicles, and this is the largest of the tanks that have to use that part of the network. And this will probably be more relevant when we talk about the proposed SAN and the need to provide pedestrian refuge area. But just to say, these vehicles are slow moving. They can stop easily and allow pedestrians to cross, or they can deploy banks, persons or chaperones to allow pedestrians to cross. So I think that's all for now. I want to move back to you.
Thank you. Chair, through you.
Yeah.
I'll carry on. The next four slides are suggested to be approved planning drawings. They relate to surface water drainage and foul drainage, so try not to labor on them too much. This is, as you can see, the surface water drainage, and the blue lines downhill running to the east of the site into the drainage basin, the attenuation basin here. And as my colleague Susan just mentioned, there's an access to the east. That's right here, as you can see with the cursor moving around it. The next two slides are about foul drainage, and these details have been agreed and will be subject to conditions in the Section 106 agreement. There is the package treatment facility here, and no objections have been raised on those matters. This is I give you a general idea of what the proposed sewage treatment works would look like. See, just one, not much of it is above ground. Chair, as I think I've said, you've all had the chance to read through the report and the recommendations, so I won't labor on anything. If you have a question, I'd be happy to address that. I would just draw your attention to the relevant history of the site, that housing and residential development was permitted here back in 2015 for 23 dwellings, and those have already been built and occupied. At least it appeared so to me when I walked the site. And here before you are some of the main points in the planning balance that I think are relevant. Now, it should be noted that the proposal is contrary to the Purbeck local plan because it's outside of any settlement boundary. However, our housing land supply is about to enter into a very dire situation. And I've mentioned planning appeal that we received from elsewhere in Dorset, and I was privileged to that. Those are the right words, it wasn't.
It's coming more generally under other policies in the plan. And I think also Helen has maybe got something to add in terms of the, have you got something to add in terms of,
No, that's perfect.
have you got something to add in terms of the livability? No, okay, Robert's already covered it, thank you.
And then, Chair, if I may jump back in.
You may.
But again, I'm going to be deferring to my colleagues. You'll see in the report on the affordable housing, it's going to be a policy compliant 40% of the total. But you've asked for the breakdown on social rented as opposed to affordable rented. Is that correct?
Not simply through, not simply affordable rented, but there are other mechanisms to deliver affordable housing. So it could be shared ownership at whatever percentage or whatever. So how is that going to be delivered? What's it going to look like?
I don't have that to hand at the moment. Chair, if you will allow me to put a question to the applicant sitting in the audience, you might be able to add. May I, Chair?
I was simply wondering if the breakdown of affordable housing would be covered at reserve matters.
Yeah, because it's 40% of the total, and we have an up to figure, we don't know the exact number. So the 106 will be written such that if there's a percentage left over, we'll go for a cash contribution on that percentage of half a house. You know, we expect to get about 16 houses here.
How's it your name in the comments?
Thank you. Do you want to read that out for us? Right there. So at the moment,
So housing and the affordable housing 10-year split has been presented to DC Housing, which is 2 social rented 10-year, 12 affordable rented 10-year, 5 shared ownership, and currently 0.2 dwellings worth of commuters. So, we don't know the size of those properties yet, but that's the that's what's proposed for the section 106
Correct.
currently.
I think at the moment, the section 106, the recommendation in terms of section 106 doesn't set that out within that part of the recommendation, which would be, so that is something you could consider adding if you do want that. There's some specifics to be included there.
When is the section 106? Is section 106 part of this outline application, or would it form part of reserved matters?
There is a recommendation at section 18 of Robert's report, which does have the heads of terms there for section 106, which is for consideration by the committee as part of this application. So,
okay. So, yeah, Duncan, do you want?
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. So, so I do have a concern, and I would like it to be considered for the section 106. I'm disappointed that there are just 2 socially rented homes. Obviously, we're working on the Dorset local plan at the moment. I'm on the EAP for design code. Socially rented housing is what we need. And of 40% to only see 2 socially rented is not really meeting our housing requirements. So I would like that to be looked at differently. Just to nip back on the roads, and I hear what the officer says with regards to route protection. But with 40% being affordable housing, I've recently attended a seminar with, I think, what's referred to vernacularly as leasehold. And so I'm concerned that those people that need to access more affordable homes are potentially going to be stuck with ongoing costs for the maintenance of what are essentially private roads. So if Dorset are not in a position, and I appreciate this may come to later today, to adopt roads, then maybe some type of endowment for those would be appropriate. But I think highways have a comment.
Yeah, highways.
Thank you through you, Chair. Just to answer the query about adoption, we can't force the developer to put forward a development for adoption, and it's not for us to force them to do that. Thank you, Chair.
So I understand that, Susan. My point is that I understand they have to come forward to it, but many developers are choosing not to. And what I'm saying is I don't think the capacity that Dorset has at the moment is to, unless you know differently, to adopt roads. I was given a clear signal that they had no money to do that.
Sorry, through you, Chair. Yeah, so adoption isn't planning consideration.
I understand that. I guess I'm making a point on sustainability.
The provisions that are set out in the report before you, particularly on affordable housing, you have your enabling officer raising no objections and setting out the breakdown of the houses in the report. I note that the policy from Purbeck, the breakdown fits with that policy, so it is policy compliant. And how the market looks at it is for the market to look at. I'm kind of stuck at this point, Chair. I can't really move past policy compliance. schemes. To ask for anything more, we don't have justification, and if we tried it, then they could appeal and get it modified.
Okay,
Chair, I don't have the exact reference before me, but the NPPG does say that if a policy compliance scheme comes forward for development, then it should be assumed to be viable in the absence of any information to show otherwise. So, notwithstanding the committee's concerns, I don't think future viability is something that can be. There's no evidence to say that that's something that should be considered.
Just in relation to the thank you, Chair, just through you. Just in relation to the, oh sorry, yeah, so it's Marion Ashworth, legal advisor. Just to come back on that point that's been raised about the registered provider and how they come to the Section 106 agreement. They've been bound by the Section 106 agreement as successfully entitled to the site. And obviously they take on the terms as they come to the agreement as it stands. And obviously if there were to be any difficulty with that, then they would need to come back to vary that Section 106 agreement in terms of what's on the deck there. And that would have to be considered a separate application on its own merits.
and indeed we've had this happen several times in the past, where people come back with viability issues. I just want to make the point that if there are appeals, if they do come back with viability issues, it will have to come back to this committee. I hope you remember the discussion that went with them. Okay, Councillor Hobbs-Chow, did you wish to speak?
I think was Councillor Brenton first.
Councillor Brenton and then Councillor Hobbs-Chow.
I know we can get stuck into Councillor Brent and Letitia Upton. We can get stuck wandering around whether RPs will take on a project or not. That is a worry. And also it is always a worry that developers will say it's not viable to give us what they originally promised. But that does come a bit further down the line, I think. This application is an outline in principle and about the access.
Right.
Now, in principle, this is a flipping good site to build. There's already built environment there. There are access roads in and out. It's not that far from Wareham. I mean, it's over the brow, but Wareham's going to grow. So you've got a mile one way, you've got facilities, you've got a bus route past. It is on a slight slope, so drainage isn't a desperate issue. It has established trees which will drink water and do already. So although there may be more water runoff because of hard landscaping, it isn't a major issue on the flooding side. We've got to talk about the Sang later anyway, but they have brought that into the bargain, I suppose you could say. So, and knowing this site fairly well, it's flipping obvious we should be building there. It's one of those things like, we've got a windfall site, a genuine windfall site. It could be one person's private home, which is what it used to be way back in the day. This is a site where we can put 24, 40, whatever it is, houses up to. I would propose, in principle, we accept this recommendation.
I'll take that as a proposal then. I've got two speakers coming up, Hobbs-Chow and Scott Florrick. Do either of you wish to second that proposal?
Potentially in a minute.
Talk first.
So Hannah, you're next.
Thank you. Councillor Hannah Hobbs-Chow, Stand Down South Ward. I've got a couple of a few points. Just on the going back to the registered providers in social housing, would it be up to the? Could you just confirm whether it would be up to the registered provider to pay for the social housing, social rented housing, to pay the estate maintenance fees, the road fees, if the roads remain unadopted, and does that affect viability? Taking into account that we actually can't consider that at this point, but it would just be helpful to know. Then the other thing that I know you mentioned that you would make an indicative note about the trees, certainly to the northern side, they wouldn't go in the gardens. Is there a reason why you are not minded to condition that? Then my last points regard to the safety of the eastern entrance. So I recognise it's an emergency exit. However, I can't see the detail on it to confirm whether there is protection for pedestrians at that point, given that that's the main route through the estate for pedestrians to pop out onto that bit of road. I'm just concerned that if we don't provide that now, it's a potential conflict in an emergency situation where we haven't got suitable provision for protecting those pedestrians in those instances. And then also connected to that is that you suggest that that's the route through for, an ideal route through for walkers and certainly dog walkers. We are pushing them then away from the pedestrian crossing that we are making at the eastern side onto the western side, where we've got a 50-mile-an-hour zone and no actual crossing. Is that to my mind, that feels a little bit conflicting. Thank you.
Okay.
Chair, if I may, through you, could you elaborate on that last question? I didn't quite understand the clarity of it.
Yes, sorry, yes. I suppose I'm concerned that we've got a pedestrian island at the eastern side, as opposed to a crossing point. When when you're looking at your desire lines, what people are going to do is walk through the woods to that point, as opposed to cross at the western end, potentially, if they are looking to use the sun.
So we would want them to walk through this.
Yes, yes. And it's the pedestrian safety, the crossing point at the emergency exit point.
Yeah, so that's what we want them to do. And as part of the SANG application, we're agreeing signage, so that'll be pointing people to take this path to access the SANG. Now, if somebody chooses to ignore that and walk forward into the road, that'd be most unfortunate. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
So my understanding is they have to cross the road at the eastern end to access. So my point is the crossing at the eastern access point from the built estate into the SANG, and the safety of that.
So you want to know the safety of the crossing point over here on the eastern end and the island?
Yes.
Okay, that's going to be wholeheartedly a part of the next application we're going to talk about.
Okay.
Then you asked about the tree exclusion zone and why that's not a condition as opposed to an informative at this stage. It's my professional opinion that it serves the same purpose at this point, because we don't have a detailed layout that we're agreeing. This is indicative, and we've told them through the informative that any trees within private gardens will not be acceptable. And so when we go to approve the layout somewhere in the future, the expectation from us and to them, say half of that. You have to pay 50 in social language place, the other 50. Is that correct? Am I?
I think let's not get into maybe talking about these details.
But then
this point. I think that I
Right.
think the main thing
Yeah.
to point out to members here today is that we have a policy in the local plan H11, and that does actually already set out a 10-year split for sites that provide 40% affordable housing, which is the case in this instance. And that 10-year split is 10% social rented, 65% affordable rented, and 25% affordable home ownership. So I think maybe members need to consider how this proposal might comply or not with that policy, and any justifications if there's a recommend if you're seeking to go change it. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Can we get an opinion first of all from legal that we could? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. It's again, Marion, I'm sure it's legal advisor. Yes, so the first point being, can you amend the tenure of the affordable housing? The question, yeah, the answer to that is yes, you can, but that does need to be justified. And of course, members of council's ward consider the policy in doing so. Whether the amendment is policy compliant, so it's not really a legal point, that's more of a question of any potential risk in terms of appeal. Yeah, we both say to that.
Okay. Thank you, Marianne.
I think any amendments that are put forward to the tenant need to be justified and explained.
Yeah. Just for clarity, because we've been throwing numbers around, could we put up policy percentages and the proposed percentages and just confirm what the number of affordable housing is?
Well,
And what the policy is, so we can just double check whether the policy is being adhered to.
Chair, on the social rented housing, the policy seeks 10%. And what is being provided is 10%.
So we've got how many affordable altogether?
In total, you have 19 affordable units.
So 10%, 1.9.
That's based on 48. It could be, as I said, an up to figure. Could it be less later on? So 10% of 19 is 1.9. We actually have slightly more social rented tenure there. Then the next one is affordable rented. Policy compliant is 65%. What they're proposing is 63%, and that is 12 units in total. Then we have, last but not least, affordable home ownership. And we have 5 units of that. And policy is 25%, and 5 units equates to 26%. And then there was the slight extra of 0.2 dwellings worth of accumulated sum to get it up to 100.
Okay, thank you. Right, we've had a proposal, and then we've had an amendment, both of which have been seconded.
Proposal on the main motion, sorry, proposal on the second.
No, we need to vote on the amendment. We'll take the amendment as a vote. If that succeeds, then it becomes part of it. If it fails, it falls. Okay.
Can I just come back on?
Yeah.
So we've heard from legal that we can vary the 106, and if we do that, then outside of policy, then we need to give justification for why we are doing that. So I refer you to the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, who say the main difference between affordable rented and socially rented housing lies in the rent structure and the criteria used to determine eligibility. Affordable rented housing is typically offered at a rate set up to 80% of the local market rent, while socially rented housing is provided at a rate determined by local income levels, ensuring that the rent is more affordable to those in need. We understand that the difference in income streams in rural areas is less than it may be in more built-up areas such as the BCP area. So it is for that reason that I would deviate from the policy, looking at this in its location. We know where it is. We understand the economics of the surrounding area of Wool, East Stoke, Ovington, and those areas. So that is what I'm taking into account. It's the ability of the people and the income streams that they have. It's not throwing something out with the bathwater. It's not that difficult. It's still rented. It's still accessible. It's just it's more accessible, taking into account the location that it is and the income streams that people have in that area. So I would suggest that that is the justification on this occasion to deviate from policy.
Okay, thank you. I hope still.
Yeah, apologies. Can I just clarify, if having looked at those numbers, we are looking at the suggestion or the amendment was 10 units, which equates to 50% roughly of the provision, bearing in mind that the within the proposal is that it's up to that housing number. So are we looking at 10 or at 50%?
If I may. What I'm suggesting is we've got 19 affordable homes in one way or another. What I'm suggesting is that 10 of those 19 should be socially rented, and then the split for the rest I'm not so worried about, except, to be honest, the either discounted and perpetuated by 25%. I don't recognise the 25% anywhere in Dorset as being the bit that people can't afford. It's the 75% they can't afford. And with regards to laddered shared, of course, you may buy in at 30%, but then you're still paying 70% of market rent.
Mm.
So the issue of affordability, if people will always say to you, I don't recognise affordable homes as being truly affordable. Socially renting is one way to ensure affordability.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you. Is that still your? Are happy with that? Are you still seconding?
Can I defer to
Chair, if I may.
Right.
Councillor, thank you very much for the justification. That's very helpful. I think what Councillor Hannah is saying is the proposal is an up to figure. So we don't have a definitive number of houses going on site. It's going to be 40% of whatever that total will be. Okay. And as of today, the numbers are what we quoted. So I think what the councillor, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, is saying is no matter what the total number of houses is, do you want 50% of those to be affordable?
Yeah.
Affordable rented. Yes. And that the answer is yes?
No.
No.
You need to switch your mic off. So, and I appreciate you use the wrong term, and we're not talking about affordable rented, we're talking about socially rented. And the 10 is based on the figures that we're looking at now. Should the overall figure change, then I am content for that 10 pro rata to be changed with the actual build out number.
Okay, that's fairly clear.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow on from points made, Councillor, here in relation to the proposal change, I think what's important to consider here is the local plan was adopted in 2024, so very recently, so it's up to date. And so I think what we need to know is on the explanation as to why you say that's changed in terms of the proposal to the forward figures.
Thank you, Marianne. We've heard, just repeat where we are currently, just comfort of everybody at home watching. Got a proposal on the main subject. We've had it seconded. We've had an amendment proposed, which has been seconded. The amendment is to increase the number of socially rented houses from 2 to 10, or proportionally thereon, should the build out numbers change. So that's the amendment that we vote on first, and then we vote later on the substantive item itself. So unless anyone's got anything further to add, I think we need to take a vote on that substantive, on that amendment.
Sorry, Chair, I need clarification on one point. And that was the proportionate element. And so what's in the report now is 2 social rented, 12 affordable rented.
Yeah,
you would rather that to be 12 social rent, pardon me. 10. And 10 social rented. 10.
Can I help you there, Robert?
Yeah.
The proposal was 10 social rented, or the proportion thereof equating to the total number of the build out, and for the rest to fall where they will, but ideally in the same proportion. Is that right? Yeah. So does anybody have any questions on what the amendment actually is? No, we're all clear. So can we vote? All those in favour of the amendment, please show hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess that's going to swing it. So the amendment's carried. Yeah. And we need to add conditions from the update slide. Trees were updated. The proposal is to accept the recommendation from the officers. Is that right? Yeah. That was your proposal, yeah? With the variation as just voted on.
I accept the variation because it was voted for.
Okay. You're happy to continue seconding that. So can we vote on the substantive motion? All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that looks like it's unanimous. Okay, so after much ado, P4 2023-07467 is approved subject to the change in condition to allow 10 socially rented houses. I think we've got the sang as the last item. I'm reluctant to break now because I don't want to spend time on a lunch break and then come back and find nobody here.
Carry on.
Carry on.
Get this one done.
So if we move on to the final item, which is Hope Farm. Sorry.
No, it isn't.
It isn't. We've done
The
that.
sang.
It isn't.
Which is
It's the road
the
crossing.
sang to do with the bingo. So it's P4 2023-07467, land south of A352.
Just need a good map. That's
E6 Stoke. And thinking back, I may have just read out the wrong number for the approved one, which should have been 6/2018-0228. My apologies if I did get that wrong. I've got a nasty suspicion I did. So that one was approved. So we now move on to P4 2023-07467, Plan South of the A352, which is the SAN, the vinegar development. We have a presentation again from Robert.
Thank you, Chair. I trust you've all had an opportunity to read the report, so we'll just go on the highlights. This is the location plan relative to the vinegar site that we just saw. So the purple star, the smaller one, is the development site of the housing, Vinegar Hall, and the orange larger star is the Sang site. And here in the upper right-hand corner is the rectangular Sang. And this corner is the eastern corner of the development site. This next photo is an aerial photograph. The site area is approximately 5 hectares. There's currently field access to the east, which you can see in this photograph. And that lay-by, when I was there, I think you could get probably 4 or 5 cars in there. 3 is more comfortable. There's also a lay-by on the A352 where you can get 2 cars easily. The guidance recommends 1 car per hectare, as mentioned. To the south is a rail line. And to the west is an existing hedgerow. You can see from the aerial photograph the difference in foliage on the site. This part of the site to the east is a grade 4 agricultural land, because it's a bit boggy, I believe. And the rest of the site is grade 3 agricultural land. This next slide is just a broad view for you to see some of the thought and details that are going into the design of the Sang. They'll be putting in a couple of hedgerows through the middle, as well as additional screening along the southern boundary of the railway. They're proposing to put in a wetland feature for ecological reasons. If you would have looked at some of the plans on site, this is accompanies that previous drawing that came in early on. This is a plan proposed to be approved. You'll notice that there is quite a bit of detail on this plan, and we're satisfied with the content therein. The next slide the next 2 slides relate to the highway issues, and I'll turn over at this time to my colleague Susan.
Thank you, Robert, through you, Chair. So the Eastern Point will have a new 2-metre segregated footway extending out, running easterly on the northern section of that Wareham Road, connecting to the access with the Sound to the south via a crossing facility which incorporates a new pedestrian refuge island midway. Again, that complies with inclusive mobility and design standards as part of the Section 278 works that comes outside of planning under the Highways Act. It's been presented to us by the applicant, and it's been subject to an independent stage 1 road safety audit that we as the overseeing authority are agreeing with. It's considered acceptable and deliverable, and the next illustration of the MOD vehicle details that a large tank can be accommodated safely and within capacity through those gaps. So what's been put before us in terms of that refuge crossing is adequate and acceptable with the thought of the Sound. Thank you.
Moving right along, the next couple of slides is just to help you with some of the thinking that went behind this application, particularly with regard to the planning guidance, the supplementary planning guidance, and some of those first, there are about 14, 15 questions that the guidance puts forward for developers to think about and how they design their SANGs and what would be most appropriate. So on accessibility, you might start thinking, does the SANG provide adequate free parking? We've gone over that. You've got the lay-by parking adjacent to the site immediately. And then you also have this community hall and an abundance of parking for people there. So I think that gets ticked off. They also ask about, if you have a dog and your dog's getting out of the car, there's that safety aspect. Certainly, if you're in a lay-by, you'll have to be far more careful with yourself, with your animals, and keep them under control. This free parking, when it comes to fruition, would be far safer. I have a dog that's a bit crazy. I always have to be extra careful and vigilant when I let her out of the car. I don't let her out of the car without a lead on her. So you need to know your dog as well. Other questions that you might want to ask yourself when we considered this, certainly, is the car park easily and safely accessible and of an open nature? And could it clearly be signposted? So in the details that I flashed up there earlier, certainly signposting and signage was a major feature raised in our negotiations. I mentioned in the last presentation that the distance between the community hall car park and the access to the SANG is of 410 meters. That's there. So it is at the edge of it. It is a bit far away, relatively speaking. But you have other lay-by parking there. So this is additional parking. Access points should have signage. We talked about signage, taking into account the SPD guidance. Your Heathland mitigation officer has no objections to the final scheme being presented to us. And this scheme accords with policy in the PROVAC plan. I accept that the loss of quality grade 3 agricultural land is regrettable. However, the quantity, in my opinion, is not significant. It's not more than 20 hectares. And the benefits of providing the SANG for relief on the heathlands is a significant benefit. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Robert. We now have a public speaker. You know the drill.
I do. Councillors, the application before you seeks permission for the change of use of a parcel of arable land to a SANG. The site was identified as the right location for the provision of a SANG to provide the necessary recreational mitigation associated with the residential development of Vinegar Hall immediately to the north, following a lengthy assessment process and multiple stages of engagement with Natural England and Dorset Council's Heathland Mitigation Officer. The site is the only accessible and available land parcel. It is agreed by Natural England, and most importantly, is considered as realistic prospect of members of the public using this SANG for recreation as an alternative to the protected sites of the Dorset Heathlands. The SANG site is in this regard positioned closer to the residential scheme than the Heathland, and a dedicated access is proposed to ensure it can be safely accessed by all members of the community. The site doesn't comprise best and most versatile agricultural land. There will be no loss of valuable resource in this regard, but instead the site will become a valuable public open space to be enjoyed by the community. The applicants work closely with Dorset Council officers and Natural England to define the design and arrangement of this SANG and specification of its infrastructure, alongside detailed discussions about the future management and maintenance of the land. Technical consultees all confirmed their content with this arrangement. There's clear benefits to biodiversity generated through the landscaping approach, and a positive contribution will be made to the national landscape. A detailed landscaping scheme and planting plan accompany the application, and alongside the landscaping management plan submitted, it demonstrates how it will be managed and maintained. The responsibility for recording of this will be enshrined within the Section 106 legal agreement to ensure this occurs, and the Council is well versed in putting together such legal agreements in relation to sales. In this case, the application will bring forward just under 5 hectares of public green space, which will have both naturalistic and maintained areas and provide an excellent facility for all members of the community to use, whether dog walking, meeting friends and family, picnicking, playing ball games, or generally enjoying the outdoors. Members of the public will be able to walk or cycle to the Sound or access it by public transport, with the bus stops located in the vicinity. If the choice is made to drive to the site, there are parking spaces in the lay-bys and also dedicated provision within the site providing additional parking. And there's a dedicated walking route suggested through the existing woodland area there to provide a safe and convenient access. The position of the parking essentially provides an additional length of attractive walking route, which will appealing to the public due to its woodland character, providing a contrast to the more open nature of the Sound. The Sound is designed to be usable in all weathers and all seasons, with a mix of surface and mown grass parks, and planting and other features, including a wetland area and natural play features to provide interest. The officers have set out clearly why the proposed development addresses all of the relevant Sound criteria within the Dorset Eastlands planning framework SPD, and show that there is demonstrable public benefit arising from the delivery of this green space. The Parish Council expressed concerns relating to highway safety. However, the crossing has been designed and arranged specifically to modulate vehicular speeds. We've also confirmed that we will support extending the 40-mile-an-hour zone by approximately 560 metres to the east if the Parish Council chooses to progress that. However, the access as designed is safe, has been subject to a road safety audit, and your highways officers expressly support this approach. There's no harm arising and clear public benefits. We ask for support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any responses to that, Robert?
No, thank you.
No. Yeah. We've got another statement from Councillor Ben Wilson, which will be read out by Councillor Duncan House.
Thank you. Whilst the parish would have preferred an alternative site for the Sound to the northwest of Binnickville Hall development, as detailed under section 6 of the report, they accept the current proposed location. However, given that this location is the other side of the busy and fast A352, the considerations for highway safety with this application should not be understated. There are 2 specific concerns to be raised. Both myself and the Parish Council have concerns regarding the impact of Ministry of Defence vehicles, including tanks, travelling through the proposed pedestrian crossing and the rapid degradation of the crossing as a result, thus leading to further safety issues and the likely underuse of the Sound. We need assurance from highways that this crossing will be appropriately maintained as a priority and that there is an agreement between MOD and Dorset Council regarding liability for the cost of any damage resulting from MOD vehicular movements. The current speed limit through this section of the road is 50 miles an hour, whereas it is reduced to 40 miles an hour, a further 500 metres to the west. I request that the extension of 40 miles an hour zone to cover the area of the Sound is included as a condition of granting of this application under recommendation 3 of the officer's report.
Thank you. Again, any response to that from officers? No. So we can open it up for debate and questions. I have a couple to start with, if I may. My first question is regarding the Heathlands planning framework, which expired on the 31st of March this year. So we are referring to that, we're using it. There's nothing, it's not been replaced by anything. The first thing is I'd like a legal opinion as to what weight that now has. Any comments from
Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Sowie House?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Sarah House Corfmullen. A couple of things I'd like to take down on that one. It's just a comment really for Susan Hetherington Highways. With regards to the refuge, and I understand, we don't do anything with roads without it going through a full safety. It's very, very complex to do anything to a road. I would just say the lived experience of people we're considering crossings in our community who are wheelchair users find refuge very, very tricky to use. They're lower down, less visible in the road, and they are nervous about using them. So I think were it a type of refuge similar to that outside of the Paul Arts Centre, which has rails around it, that someone would feel safe once they got into it, and actually can't just ping out the other side of it into the other carriageway. That might be helpful if that could be considered. I think Robert, in his presentation, spoke about the Eastern lay-by, and if we can, I think we should listen to the parish council and the ward member with regards to the lay-by on the A352. I don't think anyone would consider that ideal, and we ought to be, as a planning authority, advocating for good design, and I would suggest that that lay-by doesn't represent good design. Robert spoke about in the eastern access and adjacent to it, 4 spaces, but more comfortably 3 for vehicles to park. I accept that. And the applicant agent, Adam Bennett, spoke about the wider community coming to use this, walking, cycling, and driving. So as far as I can see, what would satisfy the ward member, the parish council, and those that have concerns about crossing the road is probably not a hill that anyone would want to die on. If 3 additional spaces of provision, either extending the lay-by on the eastern region, 6 cars would fit there, and the necessity to cross the road would be mitigated, and if we'd say 1 car per hectare, then that would be considered adequate. I totally recognise the issue with parking within the Sang, and it wasn't that long ago that this place considered an application at Carley Cross, and the parking for that Sang was absolutely within the Sang. And if you remember, we looked at a variation of condition because the developer wanted to use some of the Sang for building materials whilst in a different order. And we looked at that. We looked at the parking. It very much describes what Councillor Morgan described, which is being able to drive into a site, open the car, and as Councillor Took read from the NPPF, for the dog to be able to get straight out of the car. I think whilst the officer, Robert, says, well, this is what people will need to do, they'll need to make sure they've got their dog on the lead and all this and the other, and you would hope that most responsible dog owners would do that. However, not all dog owners are responsible. And you could say, well, that's a risk to them and their dog, but it's also a risk to other road users. And we know that there are not considerate or responsible dog owners, because certainly in our town council, we spend quite a lot of money running around behind them, picking up dog food, despite the provision of bins, bags, and all the rest of it. That would be a very basic. If you've got something like a dog and you put food in one end, I think we all probably know what the result in a few hours is going to be. So I would think it would be reasonable to extend the parking on the eastern side by just 3 more car lengths. That would provide 6 spaces there. I wouldn't like to, I know the road very well, the A352, I wouldn't want to think of anybody stopping they're getting out of a car and getting a dog out. And I'm almost certain that the applicant wouldn't find it too much of a stretch to provide 3 additional parking spaces to access the site. Thank you.
Thank you. Comment?
Nothing to add there, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, I just remembered actually that one of the first signs that was provided, and here's where I correct myself, is off the busy main road. In fact, it's Wimborne Road West or East. That was one of the first signs, if you like, that was provided. And there is car parking there, so cars can drive in. In fact, it got to the stage where a barrier was put across this to stop lorries going in and there parking. So people who use that sign, yes, do go out, and it's off a busy road, and they drive in and park. And I think our then parts department, shall we call it, then did things with it, put a pond in and another play facilities. And that was provided because of the housing, which is the other side of the road, which is now nearly complete. So I'm just correcting myself, but that's the situation there. But as far as I know, all the other signs are just off, near the housing.
Thank you. And you remind me that one of your earlier points, I think, was to do with the ongoing maintenance. And I don't think you've got an answer. I think that might be in the report.
I believe it is in the report. Certainly is.
Just refresh our memory on that.
Yeah, it's condition 3, the management of this. Yeah.
Could you?
That's condition 4 is about management of the site. And we have also any the issues.
Update availability and management of the sign.
So we have it as part as a condition and partly in the 106.
Could you speak loud and say that?
Sorry,
I can hear you.
Management will be covered. Management of the sign will be covered. We have it in condition 4 at the end of the report, as well as an element in the section 106.
And what will happen in the event that Well, can you explain what that actually says rather than just say it's covered?
I beg your pardon. The condition is seeking details that's set out there. And those are details that will have to be agreed as part of the condition. So, sorry, at the moment, I'm searching for, is it showing?
So I'm sorry, have we got details of exactly what happened?
No,
for the future maintenance of this site should it not the developer or whoever's responsible come bankrupt or whatever. Where's the sign? Who's going to pay the maintenance of the sign? How will that be handled?
So in the report, it says that the sign would be managed in perpetuity through a management company, and a Section 106 agreement would secure that. which is the same as we've applied to all things in the area, as I'm sure councillors will be aware.
That's
yeah.
That's good. I'm just glad we managed to get it out in the open.
Right.
Eventually.
Would I be able to say something just about the parking provision?
Yeah, please do.
Would that be okay? So I think just obviously there's been a lot of talk about parking, and I just want to kind of as we're all aware, the purpose of SANGS is mitigation of impacts on the heathlands, and some SANGS are intended mainly to serve the particular development, which I think this SANG would fall in that category. Others are maybe to we do have strategic SANGs, which are for large areas as well, and then sometimes we have a SANG which is serving a development or a group of developments that aren't very near the SANG, and so people would need to travel there. And whether or not we need car parking for a SANG is kind of a bit of a case-by-case scenario, and it's going to depend on how far away the SANG is from the development and the people that are likely to be using it. And the guidance does say that if it's intended to attract visitors by car, then it's essential to have that car parking. But you could look at that the other way, in that if it's not intended to attract visitors by car, then it's not essential to have car parking. And so I think for members today, maybe there's a bit of need to think, is this actually a SANG which is intended to attract visitors by car? Is that its primary purpose, or is its primary purpose the walking of dogs from people who live in this development? Yeah. So I hope that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liz. Yeah, so essentially what you're saying is if it's designed to attract visitors, it should have a car park. If it's not designed to attract visitors, it's not required to have a car. Is that a summary?
Yes, I think it's not essential, and so any parking would be a benefit on top of what's needed.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Benton.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Brenton, Litchfield and Upton. I understand that all the issues about parking, but can I bring you back to this report up on our screen? On where do we get to? Screen.
Excuse me for a moment, Councillor Benton. Can I just interrupt to say that it is now 1 o'clock. We're nearly finished, but can we have a vote to continue past 1? All those in favour? 1, 2, 1. Unanimous. Thank you. Sorry, Alex.
Okay, it's slide 8, which is the diagram of the actual crossing area, that one. And it doesn't show very well. It's a very cluttered screen. So I'm afraid I just wanted to ask the highways officer a couple of points. On my screen, and I suppose everybody else's, but you can hardly see it up there, which is why I asked. The blue area, the pale blue area, is all highways. Yes? Okay, I'll do it sort of one at a time, because is the pale blue area all highways tarmac area? Okay. What's the width of the road at the western entrance, where you come out of the, where one would walk out of the Vinegar Hall Park and come out? There's obviously, there's some, I think it says dropped curbs, so you can go across onto the pavement. And then I assume this is the sort of red outlined bit is the pavement. Yes or no? Has that been taken off the width of the road, or is it an additional width of the road? Basically, has this road been widened to put a footpath in on the sides, or is it all the pale blue stuff, just that the highways own it, and therefore some of it might be shaggy verge that you wouldn't want to walk on? Because to the south of the road, you have a darker blue sort of triangle, which I think is shaggy grass. And then you've got a sort of ochre coloured bit, which I think was effectively, what do they call it? Informal lay-by, which basically means somebody's driven onto the verge so often it's become a lay-by. It isn't a surface lay-by. Is that how I'm reading it? So when the hatched area that goes down the middle, which is where your refuge is going to be, somewhere in the middle of all those lines, is that actually a narrower bit of road than it is now? Or is it a wider bit of road than it is now? Or is it just the same and you've shoved the refuge in the middle, which makes it very constrained? So there's a few things I just wanted clarification in my head, because I'm looking at slide 8 and going, thank you.
Who wants to take that?
I would prefer it to you get it go.
Sorry, I just find it a bit confusing.
So just to confirm, the information that's showing on the drawing at the moment with the lighter blue is at that moment in time, that was the extent of the adopted public highway.
Highway, not verge.
It could be, because the highway could be verge as well.
So
So
I see.
it's not necessarily pardon, but it looks like, I know it's a bit difficult to sort of to decipher from here, but in answer to your question, the works will be carried out within the highway. Whether or not some of the verge has to go away because it needs to be hardened to facilitate so that you can still get passing width and the refuge in there. Well, I think that answers the question, but come back if you need to.
Okay, so so just to clarify, the area, the small area where the refuge is and where the widest bits of the hatched area will be wider than it is now, because that will be hard surfaced, that will be tarmac, as opposed to verges as it is now. Because otherwise you've got a pavement that might be a pavement, a walkway, which may be encroaching on the existing road, which makes it narrower. Now, I know there's an argument that says, of course, if you narrow a road, it makes cars slow down. Was that the point of the exercise, or is this refuge and everything going to be on an existing, if not widened, bit of tarmac?
So, there is a road there at the moment.
Yeah.
There's verge, grass verge.
Yeah.
Some of that grass verge will become pavement.
That's what I wanted to reinforce.
Okay. Paul?
I think I'm repeating what you've said. So the blue is owned by the highway authority.
It's owned by.
If it's necessary to increase the pavement within those boundaries, then they will be asking the developer to do so. So there's that space. The red where the pavement was proposed, if I can actually go, so the pavement clearly fits in there just fine. And you have about another meter before change of ownership in land. So that white area is in private ownership, just to be clear. The pavement is in the council, the highway land. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And does that resolve the issue for you?
Pretty much, yes. I just wanted clarification because this is a very congested diagram.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for that one. Duncan.
Thank you, Duncan Sally House, Corfmullen. So I just want to go back to the officer's advice around parking, to provide parking or not to provide parking, as to whether the site is to be used or considered to be wanted to be used by users outside of the immediate area, or whether it's unique to a particular development. And I refer back to the agent's representation when he said that it would be, their view was that it would be used by the wider community. People would be able to walk there, cycle there, or drive there. I can't imagine there are many people in the proposed development that will drive across the road. So if we're talking about people driving, then clearly they expect it to be used outside of the area. I know this would be detailed, but it's quite a good image of the plan for the sign. But there's nothing about cycle racks there, or provision of anything like that. I hadn't seen them, sorry. So, you know, we have declared a climate emergency or light sustainability. Should somebody want to cycle there, then we should enable that. So, so I think it's clear from the presentation that it's expected that people outside of the area will. And as I say, I think it would satisfy the ward member and the parish council and concerns that people have here by crossing the road if there was simply 3 additional spaces, the eastern end, for cars to park.
Is that the eastern end of the sand where there's a little gateway access?
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Hobbs-Shell.
Yeah, just to go on to that in terms of parking as well, it was mentioned, I think, in the previous application around potentially parking on the verge or the road if there wasn't adequate provision. Now, this, for me, would potentially be a significant risk, especially if we've got the large vehicles using this, the MOD vehicles. Apologies, I don't think I said my name, Councillor Hannah Hobbs-Shell, Fernand South. Is there, can we condition this for a TRO to prevent, to have a no loading, no waiting element to this, to secure that, to provide that safety?
Okay, thank you. Based on your comments and on Councillor House's comments, is anyone making a proposal for an amendment, change the parking arrangements, or are we simply debating?
Could I?
Councillor Hobbs-Shell.
Could I just seek that we are able to make an amendment on a TRO and as well?
I think legally we're allowed to make an amendment, and perhaps to, if it were then granted, that amendment may or may not come into force, or may indeed get appealed. That's entirely where it works. But I've not heard any proposal of any sort yet. So, okay, Duncan.
So I'm happy to make a proposal. I'm content with the site. I mean, there's clearly a good investment. I think it's a good provision, and certainly with some of the imaging that the applicant has given as to what their vision of it will be, I think it will be a good amenity to have. I think I think, not to put words in my mouth, but I think where Councillor Hannah Hobbs-Shell is coming from, it is based from one of safety. And I think actually simply the creation of hard standing for parking, whatever that might look like, whether it's stone, 2-inch down compacted, or a tarmac, I think all of those issues can be dealt with the additional parking spaces. As I've said, 6 parking spaces down on that east side takes everybody off of the main road. You've got safe transit then into the sand when offloading or putting dogs or children even back into vehicles. So my proposal is to accept the recommendation with the amendment that we condition the parking spaces off of that main A352 and down into the side road.
So just again, for clarity, we've got a little notch on the eastern end, which is an access. So it's saying that car can come off the main road, down that side road, up into the sound, through there, and there would be just inside the sound boundary, there would be space for 5 cars.
Yeah, who's in control of the mouse?
Me.
Oh, well done. I didn't see your finger move. Yes, I'm not sure that it needs to. It looks from here. It could be my prescription, but it looks as though the spaces that you spoke about are actually just prior to going into the sign. Is that a?
Yeah, it's a tractor entrance.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's a field.
just to the things on right. So if you come over to the entrance,
Slide 4, if you look at slide 4, you could see it better, I think.
Or 13. Where it says P.
Slide 4, you get an actual photo. It's like a lay-by there.
yeah, you see there's well, it looks like either a fly or a black car parked in it. What I'm talking about is extending that to accommodate 6 cars instead of the 4 that you suggested, or comfortably 3.
Oh, it's plenty big enough.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, it's very much for the legal advisor. Councillor, I wonder if I could just ask you, just to confirm that you're happy in your proposal and the detailed condition wording is delegated to officers, consultation, perhaps with the chair and vice chair, in due course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so that's the proposal. Embedded within that proposal is a change to the parking arrangements at the eastern end of the sound. So they would accommodate 6 cars rather than 3. So that's the proposal. I'm going to see if we have a seconder first, but does somebody wish to make a comment or second it? Or is your hand raised? I can never tell.
No.
Better.
Yeah, I always used to tell the children I taught to raise their hands, so, for example. No, I was going to second the recommendation.
Okay. You wish to speak on it as well, or just second it?
No, not particularly. No, I think if people are being asked to drive to the sign, then it makes a difference. You must provide some parking. And as I said, the one off Wimborne Road, west east, has got parking provided there because you've got to drive there.
Okay. So that's a proposal. It's been seconded. Somebody else have a hand up?
I would have seconded it. I don't think specifying 6 is necessary. I think specifying 4 or more is fine, because cars aren't all. I mean, 6. What width's that?
This is a full application, so we need to get the wording correct. I'm sorry to be pernickety. It's my job.
At least 4, then I would say.
So the proposal is at least 4 car parking spaces, well, as opposed to 6, or pick a number out of a hat.
I think the officer has said that he believes there are currently 4, comfortably 3. So I would say, you consider the type of vehicles that people use to drive around with cars, then it ought to be said, I'm very happy for the exact wording of that to be delegated to officers. I thought they look at average lengths of cars all the time. when making their decision.
Bigger.
Right, so
Sorry, Chair, can I just clarify? Are you seeking that some parking be provided within boundary of the Sang? Or is this about parking out and laybys on the road?
Laybys are private.
And
the lay-by is a certain size because it is a lay-by.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Well, when you're looking at this B road, the car parking spaces are currently on the side of the road. They're not within the site. So earlier, Chair, you were suggesting they needed to be within the site. And now we've moved over to talking about this quasi lay-by next to the field gate. And that's not, it's not within the site. It's not within the red line of the site.
Okay, let's not get too
technical.
My suggestion was that there could be space within the site, but I haven't made that as a proposal. But I do feel it's a missed opportunity. However, the proposal is that the existing lay-by at that eastern end, where we see a car parked in it, should be sufficient to have 6 cars parked along it.
can I ask a legal opinion on that? Because I think that might be trying to condition land outside the site.
Yeah.
Sorry if I didn't understand the proposal earlier.
Okay.
I thought we were talking
So-
about in the site. It's in the site.
Yeah, please do.
So the illustration that I've got, I can't make my screen any bigger, and it's not very clear where the red line is. So I wasn't sure that lay-by wasn't included. I don't actually care where they go. So if they go inside, that's fine. It's about what the will of the authority is, towards the council, whether you feel that you want to provide the space within the existing lay-by, because that's something you can do. And if that's not something we can do, then I want to see it inside the site.
I think
Either way, I just want it to happen.
From the point of officers, I think we just want maybe enough flexibility that we can seek to negotiate any changes that you're putting in down there.
Fine.
So I need to be fairly clear what the proposal is going to be. So I'd like to get some accurate wording for it. Councillor Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, likewise, Councillor Hannah, Chair of South. In terms of for safety and for Sang, my understanding is that parking spaces need to be within the perimeter of the Sang, so that you are able to get a dog out off lead. And therefore my understanding would be that this has to be provided within the fenced Sang itself in order to mitigate that safety concern. But I think so some clarity around that would be helpful in terms of wording.
Thank you, Hannah. The SPD does say that parking should enable dogs to be taken into the Sang off lead. It's a should, not a must. What I'm concerned about now, my preference, I'll be quite plain about this, my preference will be to see some car parking spaces just inside that access at the eastern end. Not me, but I'd like to see something if that's possible. And I'd be quite happy to put forward a proposal to say we accept as per officer recommendation, with the addition of a condition to provide 5 car parking spaces off-road at the eastern end of the Sang. Now that would be my proposal. Does anyone wish to second that?
I'll second
Okay. So Alex seconded it. Does anyone have an amendment or a different proposal?
This might just be
Yeah, we can have 2-3 minutes just to put some wording together around that.
I beg your pardon, everyone. I have to throw a spanner in the works, possibly a spanner in the works. We are dealing with highway issues as well, and my colleague from Highways would like to make a comment on this matter.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Susan.
much. Just through you, Chair. Just to say that we can only, however, it can only comment on what's been put forward if it's going to change and it's going to be potential traffic generated because of the parking. That would have to be assessed in terms of safe and suitable access to the site. So that has to be a consideration. And also the fact that it is near to a level crossing. That's just my own opinion. Thank you.
So
So if I just come back on that, Councillor Surrey has for comment. So I'm confused now, Highways. We understand that the applicant has made it clear that they expect people to come in from the wider community. They've cited parking on the road which we consider not suitable on the A352 and provision of the existing lay-by on the B road. They also cite, for the benefit of the sound, parking next to the community centre. So at what point did we not think that this was going to be something that would be accessed by vehicles? The principle of that has already been decided and illustrated in the presentation by citing the benefit of the two laybys. We're not suggesting that the laybys get filled in so that people can't park there. So therefore, it's expected that people will travel over cars. Surely.
yeah, I would agree. If we have space for 4 or 5 cars within the sound, then you get people coming off the main road, down the B road, and turning into it, but off the B road into what is an existing access, as I understand it.
It's a field access, yeah.
Yeah. So as an existing access, then it doesn't have a problem in becoming an access, staying and remaining an access, as I understand planning. If it's an existing access, it is an access. Is that right?
I believe with field access, that is the case, yes.
Yeah. So, Hannah.
Thank you. Does this, I might be speaking out of turn here, sorry, Councillor Hobbs-Chair, Fendown South Ward, does this therefore need, are you suggesting a deferral so that you can understand the highways implications? Is that what's the suggestion there?
No.
No. Okay, let's explain that.
It's a field access.
Just wanted to clarify that.
If anybody wants to propose a deferral, they are of course free to do so. I suspect that not many will do that. So in terms of this, if the proposal is that using that existing access, subject to negotiation with highways in terms of display intelligence,